My name is Victor Fuhrman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me now and we will explore these topics and so much more with fascinating guests, authors, and experts who will guide us to Destination Unlimited. Several years ago, I was working with someone on a project. I was surprised by something she said that started me thinking. She said, "I will never mistake your kindness and compassion for weakness." Having never heard this before, I began questioning whether kindness and compassion, compared with strength, were mutually exclusive. Is it possible to be open, sensitive, empathic, kind, and strong at the same time? My guest this week on Destination Unlimited, Anita Moorjani, says yes, and that sensitive is the new strong. Anita Moorjani is the New York Times bestselling author of What If This Is Heaven and Dying to Be Me. She's a beloved international speaker and has dedicated her life to empowering the minds and hearts of people with her story of courage and transformation. Prior to her near-death experience, she worked in the corporate world. She lives in Los Angeles with her husband, Danny. Her website is anitamoorjani.com, and she joins me this week to share her path and her just-published book, Sensitive is the New Strong, The Power of Empaths in an Increasingly Harsh World. It is with great pleasure that I welcome to Destination Unlimited, Anita Moorjani. Welcome, Anita.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. And thank you for having me here. It's such a pleasure.
And thank you for joining us and sharing what I know to be personally a very important message. So before we get into the new book, let's talk a little bit about your past. Please share with our listeners your path before the experience that transformed your life.
So I was living in Hong Kong, actually, and I grew up in Hong Kong. My parents we're Indian. Ethnically, we're Indian. So my parents are Hindus, but I grew up in a very multicultural society. And Hong Kong is predominantly a Chinese city, but when I was growing up there, it was colonized by the British. And so the primary language there was English, but because most of the population was Chinese, there was also a lot of Cantonese spoken there. So I grew up speaking my parents' language, which is an Indian dialect, which we spoke at home, and English, which is what we spoke at school and learned to speak at school, and Chinese, which was the local language spoken by everybody, shopkeepers, taxi drivers, like basically everybody. So I grew up speaking three languages simultaneously. But most of the population were either British or were Chinese. And so I never felt that I fit in because I was neither British nor Chinese. I was this brown person and I was an ethnic minority. And even in school, I got bullied because I was different. And my culture was different. My parents wanted to groom me for an arranged marriage as I grew up. And I wasn't allowed to date the way the other kids were. I wasn't allowed to think about going to college. All the other kids were thinking about college and careers. And then all my British friends were going to go back to the UK for their studies for university. But I was being groomed for an arranged marriage. What finally happened, though, is that my parents did arrange a marriage for me, but 3 days before the wedding, I ran away, which brought a lot of shame to my community and my family, because you just don't do that in my culture. So I was now I was even ostracized from the Indian community. So I had this very interesting life of always feeling that I was different, that I never fit in. And I did meet a wonderful man, Danny, who is my husband today, and we met and got married. But a few years into our marriage, I had lymphoma. I found a lump on the side of my neck and had it checked. I had it biopsied, and it turned out that I had stage 2 lymphoma at that point. This was in 2002. And it progressed. I tried different forms of treatment, but it progressed. And then in 2006, I was literally on my deathbed. My body had completely emaciated. I had tumors the size of golf balls all over throughout my entire lymphatic system, from the base of my skull, all around my neck, in my chest, all the way down to my abdomen. And I weighed 85 pounds because my body had stopped absorbing nutrition. My lungs were filled with fluid, and I went into a coma, and my organs started shutting down. And this was when the doctors finally told my family that these were my final hours and that I was not going to come back. I was not going to come out of that coma. But what happened while I was in the coma, I was actually aware of everything that was happening around me, but I was also aware it was like a whole other world opened up, one beyond this one. And I felt so at home with this, in this whole other world that opened up. I felt like I was being greeted by my loved ones, my deceased loved ones, and my dad, who I had a turbulent relationship with growing up. You know, he'd already passed away. He'd already crossed over. He was there to greet me, and he just wanted me to know that he loved me unconditionally. And there's a lot that happens there. But what happened is I was in this state of clarity where I learned that it was not my time to die. And I learned that I needed to come back. No part of me wanted to come back, because on that side, I was like, I felt like I was enveloped in love, and I just felt so free. Like all the fear was gone, the fear of the disease, the cancer, the fear of the cancer, the pain, the discomfort, all of that was gone when I was there. And so no part of me wanted to come back. But then I got this clarity where I understood why I had got sick in the first place. I understood how it was that all the way I was, and the thoughts and the decisions and things I'd made in my life had led up to that point of me lying there on the hospital bed. And it was at that point, with that clarity, that I felt my dad say to me that now that you know the truth, you need to go back and live your life fearlessly. In other words, I had this clarity, and I was now being given a second chance to come back and live with this clarity. And he said, you need to live your life fearlessly, because I'd always been a fearful person. And I understood that if I chose to go back into my body, that my body would heal very quickly. And it did. So what happened is that I started to come out of the coma. I'd been in a coma for about 36 hours. And I started to come out of the coma, much to the shock of everybody around me. My family were all around me, the hospital people, the doctors, and I was able to recount conversations that they had had while I was supposedly in the coma. And so they were shocked. I was able to describe what they had done and who had done what. And so they knew something had happened. But then the doctors were blown away when my tumors, the golf ball sized tumors, just started to shrink. And within 4 or 5 days after coming out of the coma, they shrunk by about 60, 70%. Within 5 weeks, they could find no trace of cancer in my body. But the thing is, the challenge then started in that I now had to figure out how to live the rest of my life. So that was in 2006. And one of the things that I discovered as I started to navigate life again was that everything that I was brought up to believe about how I needed to be and what I needed to do and how to fit into the world was the complete opposite of what I now needed to do. What I realized is that everything that I had learned, and how, every decision, every thought, every choice I had made up to the point I got cancer is what led me to get sick. And now I had to live my life completely differently. And that was a challenge. That was a challenge because I realized that I am an empath, and the world we live in is not designed for empaths. And that's why I had got sick.
And you shared all of this in your first amazing book, Dying to Be Me. And in there, in describing your near-death experience, you said, and then I was overwhelmed by the realization that God isn't a being, but a state of being. And I was now in that state of being. What was that revelation like for you?
That revelation was really powerful for me because I had always thought that God was a being, like a being in the sky, a spirit or a person in the sky. And I used to always refer to God as a he. And but when I was in that near death state, what I realized is that when we are outside of our physical bodies, when we're no longer expressing through our physical bodies, every single one of us is pure essence. We are pure spirit, and every single one of us is a facet of God. And sometimes when speaking about it, I use this analogy. I like analogies because it's so hard to describe what it's like on the other side. So the analogy I use is, if you imagine, those mirror balls, those disco balls that
Yes.
back in the 70s, or, that the discos always had these big mirror balls, mosaic mirror balls in the ceiling. And these mirror balls would refract light onto the walls. And on the walls, there was like these separate little dots or circles of light that would be all around the wall of the room. So if you imagine that, now imagine if each one of those specks of light on the wall was the spark of each one of us. And each one of us, physically, like it was the physical expression of us. And each one of us believes we're a separate being because each of those specks of light on the wall, they all look separate from each other. But each one of those specks of light is actually a refraction or a reflection from one of the mirror tiles on that mirror ball. And that mirror ball, every tile is connected to make the whole mirror ball. So it's as though, if you imagine this, that when you die, you realize, oh my God, I am a mirror tile on this mirror ball. And all of us tiles together are all connected to make this ball. And this ball is God. And so that's kind of how the best analogy I can think of. But when I am expressing through a physical body, it's like this tile then expresses itself through the body. So it expresses itself as that speck of light on the wall. And when I am that speck of light on the wall, I forget that I am connected to that mirror ball, that I'm actually just a reflection of God, a reflection from that mirror ball. And I think that mirror ball is like a separate being who I have to kind of bargain with or pray to or plead to or worry if they're jealous of me, when actually me and every single other person or every speck of light here, we are expressions of that mirror ball. And because we are here as specks of light and we forget that and we believe we're separate, we fight with each other and argue with each other and compete with each other and judge each other. But when we die, we realize, oh my God, we're all part of God. We're all expressions of God and we're all connected and we're all one. And so that's the analogy I use to kind of explain what it felt like. And it was a big revelation for me because I realized, oh gosh, if I don't love myself and value myself, what happens is I am not allowing God to express itself through me. I am suppressing the light of God, or I'm suppressing that mirror ball from expressing itself through me. Every time I suppress myself and actually deny who I am just to please other people, I am denying a facet of that light of God from expressing itself through me.
Absolutely. Please tell us about your second book, What If This Is Heaven?
So my second book was to explain to you that heaven is not a place, it's a state of being. And that if we knew that, and if we knew that our purpose is really to express ourselves and to find our joy, heaven could be right here. Because when I crossed over, I realized that, actually, let me backtrack a bit. It's that my life before the NDE, I was always worried about creating the best possible afterlife. So everything I would do was about, I have to build up good karma, so I'll have a good afterlife. I have to make sure God is happy with me so that I have a good afterlife, so I have good other lives. So everything I was doing here was done for the purpose of creating the best possible afterlife. When I crossed over, I realized I was supposed to have the best possible life, or I was supposed to focus on creating the best possible life, not the best possible afterlife. When we're over there, we want to come here. We want to come here and play and find our joy and connect with other people. And so I realized we had it, what we learn here, we had it the complete wrong way around. And it really is about finding heaven while we're here, not about biding our time so that we can get to heaven when we die. So that was really what it's about. And I offer tools of how we can find that piece of heaven while we're here.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. What inspired Sensitive is the New Strong?
Recent events happening all over the world. And when I say recent, I don't just mean over the last year, but over the last couple of years, because I actually started writing this book in 2017. And I was finding that as I started navigating the world as who I am now, as opposed to who I was before the NDE. And when I say that, I was always this way, but I had suppressed myself to fit into the world. And that is what caused me to get sick. So I realized, though, that when I am truly being myself, who I am is somebody who is super open, super vulnerable, super whatever. I just want to connect with everybody, love with everybody. I see us all as being connected and one and all these things. I realized that we live in a world that's not conducive to being that way. What happens is that we end up getting exploited, we end up getting bullied, and we live in a world where it's just not conducive. And the other thing I realized is that many of us are highly intuitive and highly not just empathic and sensitive, but we're also highly intuitive, and we sense things and we know things and we don't know how we know them. And again, this world is not conducive for us to express our knowing and our intuition. And we're often told that it's your imagination, and it's often dismissed. And also we're told, if we do actually speak about certain things, we're told, oh, that's woo-woo. And so people who are intuitive, who are aware of their sixth sensory self, who are empaths and all of these things, we are actually the ones who are seen as delusional. And the way our culture and our society is, it feels like we are actually sixth sensory beings, but our paradigm is created for people who believe they are five sensory beings. So it's created by five sensory beings for five sensory beings. And as I explain in my new book, if you imagine that from the time you were born, you were told that you can't use your eyes and you have to close your eyes. This is in essence what we're told about our sixth sense and our intuition, that you can't use it. So imagine if you denied using your eyes your entire life and you had to navigate the world without your eyes. And if you did open your eyes and said, oh my God, there's something more than my other five senses, because we're six senses. So you have your intuition and all, but we say, oh, there's something more. And you get told, no, that's your imagination. Stop, and so I speak about how different a world we would have created if we were never allowed to use our eyes. We would have no words for different colors. We would have no art. We would have no makeup. There's a lot of things we wouldn't have. We wouldn't decorate our homes or dress up, or there would be nothing created for the sake of aesthetics. So it would be a very different world. And a lot of vocabulary would be missing, like we wouldn't have a word for sky or blue or whatever. In the same way, if we grew up embracing our sixth sense, our intuition, the world would be a very different place. And this is why for people who are very intuitive, who have a very strong sixth sense, it's not easy to navigate this world because we don't even have the right vocabulary to express it. So that's kind of, what I get into in this book.
Growing up in the 1950s and 1960s and being sensitive and intuitive, anything I'd report to my parents, they responded by saying, "You have an overactive imagination." Until events occurred right after I would say them that would confirm what I was saying. And it took a long time for people to accept the fact that what I was getting, the information that I was getting, was valid and not just a product of my imagination. My guest, Anita Moorjani, we're talking about her brand new book, Sensitive is the New Strong, The Power of Empaths in an Increasingly Harsh World. Anita, please tell our listeners where they can get your books and find out more about you and your amazing work.
Thank you. Well, my books will be available in all the main booksellers like Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and it will be in all the main bookstores. And my website is anitamoorjani.com. That's ANITAMOORJANI.com. And on my website, I have a lot of information, including the backstory of my NDE. There's an abbreviated version of my near-death experience. So you don't have to have read the first book to enjoy the second or the third book. But I guess I love all three of my books because I put a lot into my writing. I feel very emotional when I write, and they're like my babies.
Absolutely. I know the feeling. And we'll be back with more of Anita Moorjani after these words on the OMTimes Radio Network.
The best of the holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization. Their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hello, I'm Lisa Berry. Join me every Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for Light on Living. A chance to see new, hear different, and feel more as I shine the spotlight on all the ways to lighten the load of life's challenges. Light on Living is your link to that new way you're looking for, that new understanding that will enhance your life, and that positive connection that will support your growth. So join me and you'll gain insight and start to see things in a new way that motivates you.
Our country feels divided, but there's a place where people with different political views and life experiences are coming together through the power of conversation, and it feels good. Hear more at lovehasnolabels.com/one-small-step. A message from StoryCorps Love Has No Labels and the Ad Council.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week, Anita Moorjani. We're talking about her new book, Sensitive is the New Strong, The Power of Empaths in an Increasingly Harsh World. Anita, in your new book, you reference many traits that may be used to identify empaths and sensitive people. Sensitive is the New Strong offers a 35-question quiz that readers may use to determine their level of empathic ability. What are a couple of the most common traits?
The most common trait is actually feeling physically in your body the pain of someone else. So if you actually see somebody in pain, you actually start to kind of feel it as if you're going through it yourself. That's one common trait. And also what happens is that if you see something like a gory scene or something happening, even if it's on TV, and even after the TV is off, the scene doesn't leave you. Other things are like feeling exhausted and depleted when you're in a crowded place, but not knowing why, like maybe even going to a mall or something. And even when you have fun and you're out in a mall or a fair or something and you're having fun, but then after you go back home, you kind of just feel really depleted and you're like, why? I was having so much fun. It's because empaths, without even realizing it, are like sponges and they're just absorbing the energies of the people around them. So those are some of the most common traits.
How may a meditation practice aid in developing our intuitive skills?
With meditation, so one of the things I have noticed with empaths is that the best way to actually recharge your batteries, so to speak, is time spent alone in quiet time with no input. So meditation is an ideal way to do that. But you can meditate sitting alone, or you can even meditate out in nature. Like one of my favorite things to do currently is I have a tiny garden outside my home, and thankfully it's not big because I wouldn't be able to maintain it if it was big. It's just small enough for me to maintain myself, and I love that. I love my little garden. So during the last year, with us being stuck and not being able to travel or anything, I have taken to just being out in my garden, and it just replenishes me. And so for me, that is my meditation. So meditation doesn't have to be strictly a specific thing. It can be you sitting and listening to music. It can be you doing a guided meditative journey. It can be you walking out in nature or sitting under a tree or staring at the ocean or anything like that. That charge, to me, anything that you do alone that charges your batteries. You could even be sitting in a bathtub. Anything like that constitutes meditation. And for me, it's just pottering in my little garden. That's my meditation.
We also have the blessing of a little garden here in our urban setting here in Queens, New York. And when the weather is nice, one of my practices is to take my shoes off and walk out there and allow myself to ground to earth. And it's so special when it happens.
Yes, earthing is so important for empaths as well, because when we allow ourselves to, I do that too, and when we allow ourselves to be barefoot on the earth, we actually start to align with the rhythm of Mother Earth. Because empaths are so sensitive, when we're out with other people, we entrain ourselves to the energies of other people, and we lose ourselves without even realizing we do that. And just knowing these things is already helpful. But I ground myself regularly because I want to align with Mother Earth, and I want to align with nature and the skies and the oceans, and not with the crowds of people around me. Absolutely.
Do empaths need to disconnect from, or at a minimum, go on a cleanse from media and cyberspace?
Yes, absolutely. We do need to have what I call information fasts. I do that regularly. So it's a good idea to have a screenless day, maybe once a week or every 2 weeks. It's not easy to do, like to not even watch fun things, like literally a screenless day. If you can't manage one a week, because I can't always manage one a week, because sometimes I'm just talking to people on the phone or watching something inspiring on streaming on the internet. And so, but if you can manage even every 2 weeks or once a month, a completely screen-free day, that's great. But if you can't manage a screen-free day, what at the very minimum, cut down on the news media and information media. At least go for a couple of days a week or one day a week where you watch no news. I can go days and days without watching news for me, because it's very jarring. And I tend to, if I need to have information about what's going on, I tend to watch real news channels and not opinion news channels. Or I think a lot of our news channels today, are mostly opinions, and they're not actual news, but we mistake it for actual news. I will just watch and find out what I need to know. If I need to know what the protocols are right now, or whether travel is allowed, or I'll find out what I need to find out. But I don't like to spend a lot of time just watching the news.
Having been a news junkie myself until about 10 years ago, I know absolutely that it's the truth. And actually, there are days that I go now, I can go 4 or 5 days without actually tuning into anything other than anything essential that I need. I'll do a quick search on my phone or my computer to find the answer to. So I know exactly what you're talking about. I know.
Yeah, that's exactly what I do.
You say that we should embrace these gifts. Why is that challenging for so many people?
So it's important to embrace them, because if you don't embrace them, you will be judging yourself. But the big reason why it's challenging is because of the dominant culture, the dominant paradigm, and the culture we live in, where these gifts have been labeled, they've been mislabeled, and we have been taught that these gifts are either they're woo-woo, or it's quackery, you're crazy, or we've been taught that they're weaknesses. So being empathic, being sensitive, these are actually seen as weaknesses. And as you're growing up, if boys cry, they're told boys don't cry. They're told to man up. Generally, if we're told that when we're told we're too sensitive, it's told to us in a judgmental way. In other words, stop being so sensitive, grow a thicker skin. And we're actually taught that you need to be tougher, stronger, more competitive in order to succeed in the world. Otherwise, you don't succeed. So it is implied that anybody who's sensitive and compassionate and empathic will not succeed, which is really sad. And then we wonder why the world is in such a mess. It's because everybody is suppressing their sensitivity because we're not allowed to show it. And if all the sensitivity is being suppressed, and if all the people who are sensitive are hiding in the background because they feel they're so weak and they're going to be judged, what happens is that we open the doors for the less sensitive among us, the ones who are slightly more on the other end of the scale, which I call like the slightly more narcissistic end of the scale. We open the doors for the louder and more aggressive voices among us to step in and take all the leadership roles, while the empaths and the sensitive and the compassionate people hide in the background, believing that they're weak and being afraid of being judged for what is their true nature, which is actually a gift, and it's what the world needs right now.
So how may we embrace the sensitivity as a gift rather than as a curse?
First of all, it's to understand it. When you understand it, and when you stop listening to the dominant narrative that it's a weakness, it's your imagination, grow a thicker skin, blah, blah. When you stop listening to that and you understand it and you realize it's a gift, it is incredible how guided you will feel, and how you will realize that, in fact, listening to the external voices has actually thrown you off your purpose, your path. It's thrown you off from finding your joy. The reason why so many people are in fear all the time is because they've lost touch with their own intuition, and they've lost touch with their own higher self. Your higher self is trying to talk to you all the time, and it's a gift. I sometimes use the example of if way back in, I don't remember if it was 2004, 2005, there was a tsunami in Asia off the coast of Indonesia. And the tsunami, the tidal wave, knocked out all the coastal towns and cities. And many of these coastal towns were huge tourist resorts. And it just flooded that whole area of Indonesia. And many, many people succumbed, including a lot of tourists from the US and the UK and Europe and Australia. And it was huge global news because so many people died. It was a huge event. But one thing they noticed much later is that very few, if any, animals died, almost none, because all the animals knew to go to higher ground. Well before the tsunami hit, they all climbed the hills and went to higher ground. And so they didn't succumb. Why is that? Because they used their intuition. We have the capacity for the same intuition, which has mistakenly, stupidly, we have been led to believe we needed to suppress, whereas nature has this intuition. So I actually believe that if we embrace our intuition and embrace this gift we have, it will actually take us to the next level of our own evolution. And we are denying it and suppressing it. That's why it's a gift.
Absolutely. Why are so many empaths people pleasers?
Because when you feel the energies of the people around you, you don't always realize that this is happening. And so if someone around you feels awful, if they're unhappy, if they're sad, if they're struggling, and you are feeling their energy, you're just absorbing their energy, then you empathize with them, and you need them to feel good so that you can feel good. So when you're a sponge and you realize this is what you're doing, and there are ways to mitigate it, by the way, but the first step is to realize that you're doing this. I was doing this. So when I'm around someone, when I was around somebody who felt awful, I would need them to feel good so that I can feel good because I'm absorbing their energy. So I will go out of my way to make them feel good and to help them to feel good. And I won't feel good until they do. That is one of the problems that empaths face when they don't understand. But once you understand it and you realize this is their energy, there are ways to identify this is theirs, this is not mine. And then you can actually, and once you identify it, it becomes easier to break away from that and to stop being a people pleaser.
Does that lack of clarity result in victim mentality in some empaths?
Yes, it does. In fact, if empaths, I believe, are born empaths. And if so, you've had it since childhood. And so then it becomes ingrained until you understand it and break the pattern. But what happens is as an adult, you start living the patterns that you developed as a child of people pleasing because you could feel the energies of family members, and they could be very dysfunctional family members. So yes, so once you understand it, you can break it.
How do we create healthy boundaries in draining relationships?
First of all, it's to identify that you are in a draining relationship, and you don't have to judge the other person. Because one of the things I noticed is that empaths, and I was the same, I would stay in draining friendships because I felt that I was being judgmental towards that person if I said, oh, this relationship is draining. But I needed to realize, once I understood that, no, I'm not judging the other person. I'm just saying that for me, it's draining. It's because I'm an empath. I need to honor I'm an empath. And so the first thing is to realize that this is about me. I'm not judging them. People who are absolutely wonderful people, beautiful people, can still be draining to me simply because it's my nature to give everything in a relationship. So it's to identify, I have a tendency to do that. I need to take a break. I need to take time out. And then there are very, very kind ways to let people know that it's nothing to do with them and that you just need time alone. So the biggest thing for an empath is to learn that they need time alone to recharge their batteries. And there is nothing wrong in creating alone time. Empaths often say to me, oh, but I can't. I have kids and you don't know what it's like. And I have too much. There's no way I can make time for myself. Well, the problem is that if you never make time for yourself, life will give you something where you won't have a choice. and you will be taking time out for yourself. Like, it may give you physical symptoms or something. So I would suggest make time for yourself if you don't want life to make that time for you.
Absolutely. In our share before the interview started, I had mentioned to you that one of my greatest challenges in life was learning that the word no is a complete sentence. The ability to say, no, I need time for me, and lovingly and compassionately, but no, this is a boundary and I won't cross that boundary. No. And I think that's a hard lesson for many of us to learn.
It's a very hard lesson. Even till today, I struggle with it. I've got very good with it in so many areas of my life, but life still throws me challenges where I'm like, oops, this one's a hard one to say no to, but even thinking about doing it drains me. So I ask people to actually visualize yourself when you're faced with something that you are kind of thinking, should I do it? Should I not? The first thing is that if you are needing to think about it, chances are it's a no.
Yeah.
Then the second thing is to actually visualize yourself doing it. And do you see yourself feeling energized, recharged, or do you see it as a, oh God, I got to get over it. I got to get this done. Let me get it over with. Then it means it really should be a no. However, I do talk a lot in the book also about how, if you do have certain things that you have to do, like we may have aging parents or special needs children and certain things that we just do need to do. I do offer a lot of ways to mitigate our depleted energy from needing to do things like that.
Absolutely. And as I have shared amongst my community, blessed are the caregivers, for theirs is the burden of love.
Yes. Oh, I like that.
My guest is Anita Moorjani. She's the author of Sensitive is the New Strong, The Power of Empaths in an Increasingly Harsh World. We'll be back with more of Anita after these words on the OMTimes Radio Network.
Humanity Healing International is a small nonprofit with a big dream. Since 2007, HHI has been working tirelessly to bring help to communities with little or no hope. Our projects are not broad mandates, nor are they overnight solutions, but they bring the reassurance that no one is alone and that someone cares. To learn more, please visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Imagine yourself being transported to India, to the banks of the Ganga and an ashram in Rishikesh. Visualize that you are welcome to satsang with an American sannyasi who shares the wisdom of her guru. Your visualization has manifested. Join Sattvi Bhagawati Saraswati for inspiration and transformation every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
When you're unemployed, it can seem like there's no way out. But with the right tools, suddenly it all just clicks. Develop new skills and find your path to a new career at findsomethingnew.org. A message from the Ad Council.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week, Anita Moorjani. We're talking about her new book, Sensitive is the New Strong, The Power of Empaths in an Increasingly Harsh World. Before the interview started, we talked about this being able to say no and lovingly say no. And I shared a poem with you about it that came through me a few months ago. May I share it with you again?
I would love that. I love that poem. I think you should get it published.
And I'm working on a book of poetry, which this will be included in. But for those empaths out there who have difficulty saying no, this is called The Healing Power of No. A time comes for choosing rather than losing the essence that makes us so. And in the bestowing, there's power in knowing the freedom that comes with no. When said with compassion, not angry in fashion, and letting the self-love flow, there's a sense of renewing and deep soul imbuing the awareness that comes with no. So with gentle voice and the power of choice and the courage to make it so, I'm still here, my friends. There's no means in this end just the healing that comes with no.
Beautiful. See, it was just as good the second time round. I loved it. And
Thank you.
I want to share a funny story about my husband, Danny. He's he is just amazing and so supportive of my journey. And I mean, every journey, not just when I was sick, and but even this whole transition. And people often ask me, how has he been about you changing and not being such a people pleaser anymore, and so on. And I say, gosh, he has been my biggest cheerleader. So recently I was struggling with a decision or something. And then we were just talking. And then he said to me, I'm going to teach you a new mantra. And I said, okay. And he goes, tell me, like, of all the holy mantras, out there, these syllables or sounds that people make, what is the most powerful mantra that you currently know? So I said, Om. And he goes, chant it. And I go, Om. And he goes, okay, so now I want you to learn this new mantra. It's a brand new mantra, and I want you to pretend that an ancient Tibetan monk has given this to you. And it goes like this. No.
I love it.
And he goes, I want you to practice this every single day, morning and evening.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Danny is a guru.
Yep, he is.
Wonderful. There's an old expression, energy flows where intention goes. How may empaths and sensitives filter that energy?
There are actually a lot of ways. So I'm right now trying to filter it down to the best possible way. So for empaths to filter that energy, one of the things that I ask them to do is to always ask themselves what feels good, what feels uplifting, and what makes you feel depleted or tired, or and so always make the choice of what is uplifting or what feels uplifting. So we are constantly putting our attention on things, and it's a little bit like what we were talking about, watching the news. And so whatever we put our attention on, that's where the energy flows to. So if you are noticing that you're starting to feel depleted and you're starting to feel run down, you can ask yourself, what have I been putting my attention on lately? And then shift the focus. I'm always telling people to shift their focus because one of the things that is very common, what people do is that when they're going through a challenge, when you're going through a emotional challenge, physical challenge, health challenge, we tend to obsess about that challenge and all our attention goes on that challenge. And then our energy gets depleted. So I always help people and I say, shift the focus from the challenge to what you want to see as the outcome. So think in terms of what will, don't even think about how you're going to resolve the challenge, but think in terms of what will my life look like when the challenge is resolved, and start focusing on that. Focus on that point in time of when your challenge is resolved. Once you start doing that, your energy becomes uplifted. You're in a different energy state. And when you're in a different energy state, what happens is you become more intuitive. When you're more intuitive, the answers to that challenge start to come to you. I hope I explained that clearly.
Absolutely perfect. Thank you for that. In Sensitive is the New Strong, you offer many exercises for strengthening our energy. Can you share one or two?
Okay, so one of them is visualization, and it's really just sitting and you close your eyes and you can have music, but you actually visualize your aura. And no matter what size your aura is, you can actually expand it by visually imagining it getting bigger and bigger. And it actually works because here's another gift of people who are empaths and sensitive. If you're able to visualize, your visualization and what we call our imagination is extremely powerful. Your imagination is actually not your imagination. It is the doorway to your soul. And so our visualizations are very powerful if you're sensitive and you're an empath. I do have a few people tell me that they're not good at visualization. And if that's the case, don't worry. You expand your energy by feeling joy. When you feel happy, when you laugh, when you watch a funny movie, when you play with your pet or play with your children, or when you're out in your garden or watching the ocean or just splashing in the ocean, all of these things expand your energy.
Absolutely. When my spiritual, I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
Sorry, I just thought I'd add this. And I tell people to do at least one thing every day that expands your energy. At least one thing, because empaths have a tendency to forget about themselves, and they're so quick to expend their energy to help other people that you don't even realize that you start to get depleted. We just keep reacting to what's out there. I want you to stop reacting to what's out there and start consciously thinking, what will expand my energies? What will recharge my batteries, and do at least one thing every day? I just wanted to add that.
Which leads to the question, are spirituality and abundance mutually exclusive? Why do so many of us struggle with the worthiness and exchange?
So this is one of the issues, again, of our cultural thinking, our dominant culture, where we have been taught that money is not spiritual, and that that money is the root of all evil, and all of these kinds of things, which for many people, it's been ingrained. And so what ends up happening is that if we are somebody who is very attracted to spiritual teachings and the healing arts, and we're attracted to doing these things, we tend to believe that we need to have another day job to pay our bills, so that we can, and then we do the teachings, the healings, the helping other people as a kind of hobby to feed our soul. However, what happens is that when our day job very often takes up all our time, and that leaves very little time to do the stuff that the planet really needs. And the only reason we do it that way is because of an ingrained belief that if it's spiritual work, I'm not supposed to make money off it. If we could shift that belief and realize the world needs people to be out there doing this kind of work, whether it's healing, whether it's teaching, whether it's uplifting people, whether it's being compassionate, and they need to be rewarded for doing it so that they can keep doing it. We live in a really back to front, upside down world where people who are actually greedy or dishonest are actually rewarded. They're the ones that are kind of making all the money, whereas the people who are very, very empathic, compassionate, spiritual givers, they in fact end up destitute, poor, and broke. But if they were abundant, they could have helped so many more people. So we really need to change that belief and realize that spirituality and abundance need to go together like a hand in a glove.
Absolutely. What would you like readers to take away from Sensitive is the New Strong?
I would like them to know that we need to embrace our sensitivity, our empathy, our compassion. We need to embrace our intuition and see all these things as strengths if we want to see the next step of our evolution. I believe that if we continue the way that we have been going, if we continue to see those as weaknesses, then we will be at the brink of our own extinction, because the way the world has been up to now, we spend more money on weapons and tools to destroy each other than we do on feeding each other. We really, really need to change the metrics of what it means to be strong. We need to define strength differently. And in terms of strength means being compassionate, being sensitive, having deep empathy, and it means being intuitive, and it means creating compassionate businesses and so on.
And it also has to start from within.
Yes, it has to start from within. It does. Because only when we allow ourselves, when we stop judging ourselves and allow ourselves to be who we are and embrace ourselves, are we able to actually help the people around us, because we take ourselves wherever we go.
And in the words of Justin Hayward from the Moody Blues from 1970, from the song Question, when you stop and think about it, you won't believe it's true, that all the love that you've been giving has all been meant for you.
Beautiful.
My guest, Anita Moorjani, her book, Sensitive is the New Strong. Anita, one more time, please tell our listeners where they can get your book and find out more about you and your wonderful work.
Thank you. Well, my book will be available in all book retailers like Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and also probably all other regular bookstores. And my website is anitamoorjani.com. That's AnitaMoorjani.com. I also have a YouTube channel. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, so you can find me on all the social media platforms. And I am so excited about this book, and I can't wait to connect with everybody out there and have you all learn about how strong it is to be an empath.
Anita, thank you so much for your gifts and your wisdom and your book.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. Thank you for having me here.
And thank you for joining us on Destination Unlimited. I'm Victor, the Voice Fuhrman. Have a wonderful week.